How did your teacher and the teachers handle it?
My teachers were great for the most part, but I thought there was just something wrong with me. I thought that I was different, that I couldn't make friends, that whatever. So I just kind of just dealt with it. The sensitivities about bullying and stuff like that just weren't there at the time. And there were kids in school. I mean, you were either one of the well-liked kids or you were a weird kid, and I was one of the weird kids.
Okay.
I mean, I can laugh about it now, I can smile about it now, but that's really the way it was.
So, what do you remember about the therapy that I'm jumping around a little? Sorry, I'm doing that, but I wanted to ask, what do you remember about the therapy that you had when you were a young child?
I remember Shelley was just great. I remember our sessions together a lot, and I really felt comfortable with Shelley. She was great. I really looked forward to those sessions, and she used to have there was a rug, an orange and brown rug in the room that we used to play in, and there was a two-way mirror, which I was always fascinated with. I didn't understand that concept, and I enjoyed playing, and that's what it was. It was playing. It didn't seem different. It didn't seem abnormal. It didn't seem there was anything wrong with me at that point.
Did they have you interact with other children too, or was it always therapist mediated?
The preschool was a school with other special needs kids, so I would interact with those kids, but it was a fairly structured environment.
And how many hours a week would you go to Cedars?
I want to say it was about 25.
Okay. And once you left Cedars, you didn't have any therapies outside of school, correct?
No, but one of the things I did want to add about Cedars is after school I would have therapeutic companions, which typically were master's students at the time, and a few of them are now very well-renowned autism therapists, and they were great too, because they would basically continue the therapy and the playing that I would do at Cedars. They would continue that regimen, and but again, it just seemed like these were my friends, and we were playing. That's what it really seemed like. But they were doing a lot of work.
So you mentioned in first grade that you couldn't read at grade level. How long did it take until you learned how to read and comfortably read?
By the time I was in third grade, I was at 12th grade reading level.
So again, it's kind of interesting. We see this uneven pattern of development where first you're delayed and then you kind of rock it out in front. It's interesting.
We had great teachers. We had great teachers at Roosevelt. We really did. They were very dedicated. My parents pushed me as well. I mean, my mom, she was absolutely determined. God rest her soul. I love her to death. But she was a strong woman. She imparted that in me, but there was just this is the way it was going to be. And she helped me, and I had tutors and other folks. But other than what I was receiving in school until I was about 10 or 11, no, I didn't have any outside therapy.
Well, the next question was about your mother, who you credit as being fierce and intense, with pushing you to persevere far beyond the wildest expectations of the experts you were working with. So what did she require you to do?
She was
your therapist? Because
yeah,
we hear all the time now that parents are supposed to be therapists, and some of us think that's kind of a difficult role to have to play. So what was her role?
She tried to be my therapist. She did try. And when I read her logs, I realized the personal hell she was going through. And I realized how hopeless and how frustrated she felt. Because even though she was determined that I was going to be successful and I was going to get through this, she was going through personal hell. She didn't have a lot of support. My dad, kind man, the kindest gentleman that you would ever know, and a great dad, he was really in denial that anything was going on. Oh, he'll grow out of it, everything will be fine. So it was really her. And she was absolutely determined to see me make a lot of progress. And I think that she did want me to make more progress than potentially some of my therapists thought was realistic or possible. So she would do a lot of the therapies that they taught her at Cedars and other places. But because she was frustrated, because she felt hopeless, she gave an intensity to that in some ways was very difficult for me to receive, as a child. So in some ways, even though she was doing this great stuff, I built a resistance towards her, almost like, I almost felt we were clashing a lot. And I built up a strength very similar to hers to really resist that. And we had a very tense relationship for most of my childhood until my teen years.
Are the logbooks that she kept still around?
Yes, they are.
And so what was she logging?
She was logging her experiences. She was logging what I was doing, and she did it meticulously. That I was playing with this for 3 hours, that I wouldn't play with her, that I was having a tantrum, for 2 hours, whatever the case may be. She logged her frustrations about me and what I was doing. She logged her frustrations about my therapists and that they weren't moving fast enough and so forth. It was very difficult, and there weren't support groups. There weren't, autism support groups or anything like that at the time.
No, there certainly weren't in the early 80s. So what do you think the proper role is for parents to play in triaging their own children with autism?
It's a very difficult question for me. Having a son who is autistic really kind of changes that answer for me. When he was first diagnosed, I really saw myself becoming like her. We got to move, we got to do this, we got to just get him out of this. I'm not going to take anything but that he's going to be better for an answer. And my wife Leilani, who's here today,
put your hand up
she really tempered me, thankfully, and I realized that wasn't necessarily the best approach. You can advocate for your child, and you should advocate for your child. There's nothing wrong with that. And having high expectations, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be careful not to be counterproductive. And so I think there's a balance there. And it's hard because I want to just jump in there and just make it better.
Well, I guess the part that's hard when you're the parent is you're not just watching the child improve. You have a great deal of anxiety about what's going to happen. So maybe the question for us as parents is, can we participate in treatment in a way that's positive? Because it sounds as if your mom was, doing a lot of teeth grinding that you were picking up on.
Yes, I think that as a parent, therapy is really important. As a parent, you need the support. You need to talk to other parents. You need the support of a therapist yourself so you can really deal with these types of issues. I mean, I dealt with it, as I talked about in my book, I dealt with it in my own way. A lot of dads in this situation just run the other way. And I kind of did it my own way. I'm not proud of how I handled it initially, but it really just goes to show why getting help and understanding this and being able to cope with this is important.
Well, no one has any control over how they grieve when you get an autism diagnosis, right? I mean, we ultimately have control, but that first reaction is just whatever it is.
Yeah.
So back to you, since you posed the question, do you feel normal now? What does normal even mean as far as you're concerned?
I feel like me. I've had my own experience. I've had my own journey through this, which I talk about in my book. I don't know if this is the right journey for other people. I think what really helped me is that, yes, my mother and my therapist got me out of my shell, but then I just had a determination. I wanted to be like the other kids, and that's how it started. In elementary school, when I saw that there was a big difference between where I was at, whether it be academically, whether it be socially, whether it be whatever, whether it be making friends, I wanted that. I absolutely wanted that. Friends weren't an important thing to my mother. My mother wasn't a very social person. That wasn't what was very important for her. What was important for her is that I was going to be successful, I was going to go to college and all that other stuff. I wanted to have that. And I just said, hey, I'm going to have that. And I went through a lot. I think in some ways I still deal with it. Up until a few years ago, I had to focus on making eye contact with people. That wasn't something that was natural for me. I had to focus on what I was saying. So it was interesting, I would talk, I was thinking about what I wanted to say, and I was listening to myself at the same time. It's not an easy thing to do, but I got very talented at it. And so this is something that I think still impacts me. I think it is who I am. Yes, I'm a quote unquote normal person. I have a child, or 2 children, excuse me, I'm married, and I'm a CEO and all that other stuff. But, I had to teach myself how to be this way. And it's only been in the last few years that I've actually realized what it is to be this way. And there's a difference. I was able to teach myself how to socialize, how to make friends, how to be charming, all that other stuff, but I didn't necessarily realize what it meant to connect. And really in the last several years, especially with writing this book and doing some of the stuff I needed to do, now I understand what it is to connect with people and what that's about, and now I can actually enjoy that. So a lot of the therapy that we have today with kids, it's teaching them how to function and how to socialize and potentially how to learn. It's not necessarily teaching them how to feel, and that's a whole different thing.
That's a mouthful. It suggests a whole bunch of questions. Because I guess the question for all of us is how do we teach our kids to do that? But we'll get to that maybe a little bit later in the discussion. I wanted to have you tell us, as you got older, what were the friendships that you had like, and how did they change over time? And is there anyone that you're friends with today that knows you from way back when?
Mm-hmm. I had some really good friendships in elementary school. I mean, they were friendships. I had a lot of trouble with other kids in elementary school at the same time, but I had a few friends. One of them is here today, Jennifer Pasteloff, who I grew up with, and I think I teased her quite a bit in elementary school. But we reconnected over Facebook several years ago, and we have a great friendship, and it's great. And I've reconnected with a lot of other folks back then. It's cool because I'm able to have relationships with these guys that I wasn't able to have at the time. So it's like connecting with them in a whole different way. It's really a cool thing.
So let's see. Do you still feel that you have impulses that are related to your autistic disorder? Do you have things that you have to quell in yourself in terms of self-stimulatory behaviors or obsessive-compulsive behaviors or whatever it might be?
I want to say I'm obsessive-compulsive, but my wife is sitting here smiling at me. There are certain things that I do. I may like to listen to a song over and over again. I think on the way back from Las Vegas several years ago, I listened to like one song for like 3 hours straight. I'm surprised she's forgiven me for that.
Maybe she liked the song.
I don't think so.